Hey everybody, welcome back to Dodongo Dislikes, another gaming podcast. My name is Isiot, and sitting to my right is...
The Seed Pecker, the Nest Wrecker, Chestnut Checkers, Only Jedi, No Trekkers, the one and only Birdman.
That's an awful lot of pomp and circumstance.
It worked for Apollo Creed.
He died.
Yeah, he was killed by Ivan Drago's Dogma.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because today we are doing Dragon's Dogma. So this is kind of not really... Is it a retro game for us, do you think? I mean, not for us, but just in general, because this game came out in 2012. And it's only... What is that? We're 12 years old? Is that old enough to be retro? Because PlayStation 3.
Yeah, or Xbox 360. So, I think that's something that's probably worth exploring a little bit, because we've introduced ourselves a couple of times as a retro gaming podcast, and then we've corrected ourselves and said, we're not really a retro gaming podcast. We're a gaming podcast. I mean, we did the Resident Evil 4 remake, which is obviously not retro. We did Tears of the Kingdom, which obviously isn't retro, but we've never really talked about where you and I respectively draw the line between retro gaming and just gaming. So where do you draw the line?
But as Resident Evil 4 came out, like, when? When did that come out?
Resident Evil 4 originally came out on GameCube, and then shortly thereafter it came out on PlayStation 2. So it was the GameCube, PlayStation 2 era. But my point was we were talking about the remake specifically, which is obviously not retro. But I think what we have to explore and really talk about is what about those games that fall... I think you and I are both going to agree. NES, SNES, that's going to be retro. We're probably both going to agree anything on Xbox One or PS3 or later, that to us, that's not retro.
No.
What about all this stuff that falls in between? What about all the stuff that falls from N64 to Xbox 360? Or PS3. I could see the argument being made that retro is anything that's not readily available at retail. I'll throw down my 2 cents. Where I draw the line, and this probably just shows my age, I draw the line at N64. N64 is the foul ball line.
Yeah.
And anything on N64 is on that line, and I could go either way. I could call it a fair ball, I could call it a foul ball, but if it predates N64, it's clearly retro, in my opinion. If it post-dates N64, it's not retro. So for everybody out there that's like, well, my retro system is the GameCube, from my point of view, that's not a retro system. Nothing on GameCube is retro, or anything past N64. That's where I draw the line.
It's a generational thing.
It is a generational.
So for us, N64, I think, I would feel the same as you do. I think anything before N64 and back is retro. Anything N64, well, GameCube and forward, not really retro. But for our kids, for my kids, anything probably GameCube maybe is probably retro to them.
Yeah. Dragon's Dogma came out May 22nd of 2012. It's now going on 12 years old. There's going to be a camp out there of listeners who consider this a retro game. I don't, but I think I can understand from a generational gap standpoint that there are going to be people who are like, oh, they're doing a retro game this week. I don't see it as retro. If you would have asked me 10 years ago if N64 was retro, I would have said no. But you ask me today and I say, maybe. Ask me again in 10 years and I'll probably say, yeah, it's retro. So I think even my own definition of retro will change with my age. So the reason I bring that up is if you ask your son if Dragon's Dogma is retro, I think the answer would be maybe, because it falls within that period of time where he's still a child when it came out. So it checks that box. But is he old enough today to be able to say it's retro? Or do you need to ask him that question in 10 years to get a clear, yes, it's retro? If any of that made any sense.
So, Dragon's Dogma.
Dragon's Dogma. If I can, what I was going to do is just give a... Did you say I can or I can't?
You can.
I can.
Please do.
Oh, permission granted. Thank you. And anybody who, maybe this is your first episode tuning in, you saw Dragon's Dogma, thought, I got to check this out. And this is your first episode of Dodongo Dislikes Another Gaming Podcast. Just for reference, it's been clearly established throughout the first season, and we've continued to reiterate it in the second season, that Isiot is the front runner, and I am I'm the Robin of the group. I
think it
well,
depends
I have to get
on the
permission
game.
to speak.
No. Well, I mean, it depends on the game. You're going to find that there are some games throughout the course of Dodongo disliking that I have more not credence, not to I don't
clout.
Use, more
you've got
clout,
more credibility,
more cred.
So you've got more street cred on Dragon's Dogma than I do. There's no question about that. So whether I'm the sidekick or not, I do agree. I should get permission to speak.
All right,
on this game. So
even if I give you permission to speak, it seems like I'm still interrupting you at times. So I apologize for giving you permission and then taking it away and then.
Well, you're going to do it again anyway, so
I give you
apology.
Permission. You have you are the pawn, and I am the arisen in this podcast.
All right, so I was going to start off by giving a little bit of story for anybody who's not intimately familiar with the story for Dragon's Dogma. The actual game starts off, and a dragon attacks your town. You grab a sword. What's that?
It's Casardas.
Here, see, okay. This is how this episode's gonna go. The dragon attacks. You grab a sword, and the fight is very quick. It immediately rips your damn heart out like Mola Ram from the Temple of Doom. Then you come back as something called the Arisen, and you're now bound to fight a dragon and become God, or possibly become a dragon yourself if you lose, or kill yourself or something. Did I get that?
Yeah,
pretty much right.
He comes and destroys everything, and then he picks somebody to be the Arisen. Now, why he showed up at Casardas, this fishing village, instead of showing up at like Grand Soren to destroy and pick somebody, he showed up. I don't know. There's no reason. He just shows up. Now, he does this every 100 years or 200 years. I don't know what the time frame is. I don't pay that much attention, but this is a thing that happens in this world. The dragon shows up. One person's chosen to fight the dragon. You're playing as that person, but in this game, there's also people that have done it in the past. So there's the Duke, who's done it, and there's another guy that you have to go seek counsel from, who's also done it, who is more known as being an Arisen character.
I've seen this premise before. There's a little game that came out, I think about 6 months before Dragon's Dogma. It actually came out on 11/11/11. I remember that just because it's 11/11/11. How can you not remember that? But there was a little game called Skyrim that came out 6 months before this. Sounds like it did the exact same thing.
Right. It is, actually, if you think about it, because you were the dragon-born.
I'm trying to tiptoe here.
You don't have to tiptoe. Don't tiptoe. Why would we tiptoe?
There's a character in Dragon's Dogma whose name is literally the Dragon Forged. So forged, it means created or born. So what you just described, this dragon that comes back every 100 years, and you've got multiple Arisen who have fought the dragons over the course of the years, and sometimes the Arisen becomes the dragon itself. Like, we've seen this before. This is Skyrim. This is Alduin coming back. This is the Dragonborn. And forged literally means created or born. The Dragon Forged is the Dragonborn. This game came out 6 months after Skyrim, and I'll just jump right into it. From my view of playing through this game is Skyrim if you bought it on Wish.
It as worse if you have coin.
This is discount Skyrim.
What's the other one? Temu
Skyrim?
Yeah, it's Temu Skyrim.
Now, Capcom created this game. Capcom brought us Street Fighter, Mega Man, Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, all the classic Disney games. If a Disney game was ever made on a retro system, and it was made by Capcom, it was pure gold. So I'll give them a pass on this. But I think I've already kind of shown where I'm going to land.
What is Capcom? Capcom is more known for like Resident Evil, right? That's their bread and butter, that type of game. Like, and do they do Mega Man?
Mega Man, Street Fighter.
And then this is their first foray. Probably not. I'm probably talking on my ass. I'm sure they've done something else. I'm kind of looking over my shoulder to see what else they. Well, they did Ghosts and Goblins. So this is maybe not their first foray into this type of game, but it's an action adventure game more so than a role playing game. But you do play a role. You play as the Arisen, and then you get to pick between being a warrior, a archer, and a mage, and then you level up as you do in action.
I still don't know if you're talking about Skyrim or Dragon's Dogma.
I know, but that's just I don't. So if we could kind of, we've kind of got right into it, but let's get right into it. Well, the first note I have when I first started playing this game back in 2012 or whenever it came out, the world just seemed endless to me. It was one of those things like, wow, like it does this sort of fog of war map where you don't know how big the world is until you discover the world. So that's one of the things that this game does to give you a false sense of how big it is. It really isn't that big.
That's what she said.
Traveling is cumbersome in this game, and they don't let you do it easily. Like in
the fast traveling,
there's
you
no
get punished for the fast travel. You got to use finite resources to do it.
You got to use fairy stones to get back and forth. You can only go to places that have a port crystal, and there's only a port crystal in Grand Soren. And if you're playing the original game, which you were, you can only access two or three other port crystals that you can carry around and set in places to help you go back and forth. But you have to use fairy stones to do that. You can't. It's not like Skyrim. And now listen, we're going to be talking about Skyrim. We're probably going to be drawing a lot of comparisons to Skyrim as we go through this game and in this podcast. It's the what's the word I'm looking for? It's the gold standard of RPGs, right? Is that a fair thing to say?
You're right. Skyrim is the gold standard, and it's a tough standard to measure up to. For example, I played Skyrim for whatever reason. I played Skyrim before I played Oblivion, and it kind of ruined the Oblivion experience for me because Skyrim is that golden standard.
It is. So, and with Dragon's Dogma, with the travel, if I can go back to talk about how small the world is, like, you can't just fast travel the way you can in Skyrim. So in Skyrim, you have to just find a spot before you can fast travel to it. But then once you find it, you can always go to it. Here, you can't do that. You need the port crystals and the fairy stones. Now, the world isn't as big, and what makes it not so big is there's nothing in it. There's nothing in this world that you can do. Like, that sounds stupid.
Is it more, in your opinion, is it more or less, and we're going to draw some real criticism for this, or I can already envision all the hate coming at Birdman. Is it more or less empty than the world of Breath of the Wild?
Oh, man. Breath of the Wild. It's more empty.
More empty?
The world is more empty, because at least with Breath of the Wild, you have them stupid shrines and stuff.
Shrines to do.
Everything's reused. So you have a finite amount of monsters. So there's wolves, orcs, or goblins, I guess. But the goblins later on become hobgoblins, but it's the same thing. There's lizards. They're not lizards. They're sulfur saurians.
Hobgoblin, lizard. Is this Dragon's Dogma or a Spider-Man game?
Well, there's harpies. There aren't really dragons in this game. So
yeah, it's kind of like
there's a dragon that you fight, but
it's like Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Now, eventually, you do plan to have dinosaurs on your dinosaur tour, right?
There is a dragon. There's a Hydra that you fight at the beginning. There's griffins. There's what's the other one?
Didn't we already have this conversation where we talk about what's the difference between a Hydra and a dragon?
Yeah,
I don't think we need to rehash that again.
Well, there is a Hydra.
Before we move on, you're talking about the map, so I want to throw this in. Dodongo dislikes the little map that is in the bottom corner that you use to navigate yourself around on, that's not centered around you. I don't understand why you're not the central point of the map and that the world doesn't turn as you're turning. They figured this out. Come on, they figured this out in GoldenEye. This map it's useless. It's absolutely useless.
What's it centered on? I never even noticed.
It's not centered on anything. It's like looking at a map of the United States. Oh, let me back it up. It's like the map that they use in Indiana Jones, where they just scale back and that you just watch the plane go from spot to spot. That's how the map is set up, but it's not centered around you, so I never have any idea where I'm going. Dragon's Dogma has the most confusing, worst laid out menu since the Cheesecake Factory. All right.
I'm trying to get into a cadence, and
we're not going to get into.
We're not going to get into a cadence.
I'm just going to throw out a Dodongo dislikes. Dodongo dislikes how many times you have to start this game. You fire up the game. You begin your quest. You fight this 3-headed serpent, lion, goat, and then you start the game again. And you make a character. And I'm going to assume that most of our listeners are geared the same way that I am, and that character creation process takes like an hour and a half. So then you make your character.
At least.
And then you immediately get your heart ripped out. And then you start the game again as the Arisen, and you start doing training missions. So by this point now, between the character creation, the initial mission in the beginning, and then now you're doing the actual training missions, I feel like I'm already 2 hours into this game, and I'm just now starting to learn the mechanics of how to play this game and doing training missions. And it just sort of feels like I never get off the ground and get started.
Yeah, because you start as a random guy, which is supposed to introduce you to what the story is.
I get what the intent was, but it just...
Is that what it is, though? Because it's kind of confusing. They don't really set it up.
I think it was supposed to be almost sort of an unfailable mission that gets you some familiarity with the fighting mechanics. So I learned in that first mission, I can climb on stuff.
Yeah.
But...
Because you fight the
serpent lion goat.
What is that thing called? It's got a name.
I think I just said it.
The serpent lion goat?
Yeah.
No, but it's a chimera. So that's the thing, though. Like, you see the chimera at the very beginning, and you think, wow, cool. I'm fighting a giant chimera. I'm climbing all over it. The pawns are screaming and yelling stupid crap. One of them's over there looting skulls out of a pile of bones. Another one's in the background throwing rocks at the wall because it doesn't know what it's supposed to be doing. Like, the pawns in this game are ridiculous. The whole game is supposed to be about these pawns. I'll forget about the dragon. Forget about you being the Arisen. This game is about the pawns. And Capcom really wanted to build a game around this whole pawn system where you create a pawn and then you rent pawns from either your friends or just from other players or...
I completely left that out. of my Dodongo dislikes. And restarting the game. You do those training missions, then you go to town and you build another character.
Yeah. You build because you start off with Rook, I think is his name.
So now I'm 4 hours in and I still haven't started this damn game.
And then you build a pawn. So at its core, this is a propaganda piece to reseed the idea of slavery into humanity. That's what the pawns are. They don't accept payment. They will not use any of your items. Dodongo dislikes it. Pawns don't use any items, specifically healing items. And they're only there to serve you. And you can do whatever you want to them. You can pick them up and throw them off a cliff if you wanted to.
That's really disturbing.
It is a little bit disturbing.
Yeah, Dodongo dislikes the pawns. Dodongo dislikes the pawns Dodongo dislikes the pawns. I don't want a team. I'm a party of one. In Skyrim, I either send my companions away or I kill them. I like to quest alone.
I never use companions in Skyrim. I mean, they don't really do much, and they die. But because they don't use items to heal themselves, they die easily. So you're always having to your mission is to save them half the time, and I just don't want to. And if I can go back to that chimera. At the beginning of this game, when you're fighting that chimera and you're thinking it's cool, and you think, wow, there's a chimera, but the problem becomes later on in the game, you kind of get tired of fighting chimeras, and then they throw in a hippogriff, not a hippogriff, what's the other one? The griffin. They throw in a griffin. So that kind of becomes cool because it swoops down and you attack it and you can't quite kill it till it flies off. And later on it becomes a mission to go find its nest. But then they just start random. Once you beat the griffin, they just randomly show up. So the entirety of the game, just anytime you go anywhere, it just feels like a looping deja vu sequence over and over until you arrive at your destination. A looping deja vu sequence over and over until you arrive at your destination. Because you're constantly fighting the same things. You're constantly fighting orcs. And then all of a sudden, a harpy will show up, or a wolf will show up, or a band of bandits will show up. And then all of a sudden, the sulfur saurians, or just saurians. Doesn't matter if they're sulfur or whatever they're supposed to be. They're the same over and over again. The chimera, you get so tired of fighting these things over and over again. The ogres, the cyclops, you just get tired of fighting them. It's just, I don't want to walk from point A to point B because you want me to realize how big this world is, because I know that I'm going to have to fight wolves behind trees. And then I'm going to have to fight bandits who roll a huge boulder at me. It's the same stupid shit over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. What do they do to mix up Cyclops? They put a helmet on one of them. And then the one of your pawns yells out, get his armor off. But how are you supposed to get his armor off? I shoot arrows at his helmet, and it doesn't come off. Dodongo dislikes how small this world is. And there's no caves in this world.
Part of what's great about Tears of the Kingdom and Skyrim is that on your way to a quest, you get sidetracked because you see a cave, you explore it, and now you're nowhere near the area that you were originally intended to go to. Now you got a decision to make. Do I continue exploring this new area that I've just discovered? Now I've popped out on the other side of this cave. Or do I try and backtrack and find my way to my original mission? That's where I think I really get sucked into games like Tears of the Kingdom and Skyrim, because I've got a mission that I need to accomplish, but I'm so busy exploring and having fun that I might be 6 hours in before I realize, oh, I got to go back to this mission I started 6 hours ago. I don't get any of that experience in Dragon's Dogma. It feels more like a linear follow this path to go directly to this other spot and just keep doing the same shit over and over again.
That's what it is. There's no cave system in this game. There is a dungeon, I think. There's like it's called the Duke's Demance or something stupid like that, and you have to get the key for it, and you could possibly miss it. It's not like Skyrim where you go into a mine and then all of a sudden you found a drum that you got to return somewhere. Like, there's none of that in there. Like, if you have to travel from point A to point B in Dragon's Dogma, all you're doing is traveling from point A to point B. There's literally nothing to see on the way there other than what I just talked about, where you might run to a chimera and then all of a sudden that pops up a quest, like defeat your enemies. And then you defeat the chimera and the quest, that's the quest. It's just a random quest. I didn't talk to anybody. I just showed up into an area. The quest just randomly pops up. I didn't really get a reward for it, and if I come back later, it's the same stupid thing. Dodongo dislikes the random quests that are in this game, like kill 45 rabbits.
Be very, very quiet. I'm hunting rabbits.
There aren't 45 rabbits. There's maybe 10 between Casardus and the fort. So what you basically have to do, and God help you if you don't have a ranged character with you, or if you're not a ranged character, you're not going to be able to kill 45 rabbits. So you go from Casardus to the fort, and you're constantly having to reload the screen or sleep till the next day to respawn the rabbits so you can kill 45 of them. And then once you kill 45 of them, it just gives you don't have to turn it into anyone. Like, none of these quests you turn into people, they just randomly complete. So when you randomly complete them, you get your rewards. So I'm not going to
that takes the realism out of the game. You're not doing it for a purpose. You're not bringing these skins somewhere for somebody to put into to build something. You're not bringing the rabbit meat so that somebody can make a stew. It's just
kill 45 rabbits.
It takes you out of the experience and reminds you you're playing a game.
Yeah.
And you have an achievement here. Sort of like you might as well have a points counter up on the top, and you're trying to beat like playing Donkey Kong. You're trying to beat somebody's point score, and the points you're trying to get are 45 rabbits. There is no point.
There is no point. And then what happens is some of these quests is they reward you with you get your reward at that time. So on my 45 rabbit kill, I get my gold, I get my experience, and some of these quests.
And where'd it come from? Who handed you that gold?
Well, it gives me 25 skulls. So I'm out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And I randomly get inserted in my pack 25 skulls.
This whole idea of completing an arbitrary mission and then the game rewards you with stuff. It's only the game that's rewarding you with stuff because there's nobody there to give it to you. You're not doing anything for anyone. You just automatically now, here's 25 skulls. It continuously reminds you you're playing a video game. Rather than allowing you to be immersed in an adventure, it sort of breaks the fourth wall and just reminds you this is a video game. And you just completed an achievement, and so here's your reward. It's not tied to anything. So it doesn't feel like you're playing...
It's the dragon's dogma. The dragon's dogs are barking.
Dragon's dogs are barking.
So when it gives you those 50 skulls, you'll later get a quest where you're supposed to give someone 50 skulls. It's just stupid. Like, instead of like going out and collecting 50 skulls, you have to complete some other quest that gives you 50 skulls. But when you complete that quest, you're 100 miles away from home or anywhere where you can put your skulls in the bank for later, and you can't fast travel back unless you've got a fairy stone, which is a finite resource. So you have to walk all the way back. And if it's been any length of time, then all that shit that you walked through to get there is respawn. You got to fight your way back through to get it. It's not a fun game. I know that Capcom didn't want to, and they did this with Dragon Dogma 2, where they want people to feel like they're having a sense of adventure by removing things that are easy, that make it easier on you, like fast travel. So they remove fast travel.
But if they're doing that, if they're removing things like fast travel to make you feel like you're immersed in a world as opposed to playing a video game, because I'll agree with that. The ability to fast travel reminds you this is just a game. It takes you out of that moment and reminds you it's just a game. If that's what they're going for, then why have a system where you're arbitrarily given awards, you're arbitrarily given items that didn't come from within the game itself?
Yeah.
The quests are just absolutely missing that sense of purpose. There's no why behind it. Because Skyrim does the same thing. Kill 50 Draugrs. Yeah, you're going to kill 50, but you probably kill more. But that's not the way the quests are structured. The way the quests are structured is, I'm Darnell, and my team needs to go down to this mine to mine gold, but I keep losing team members because it's overrun by Draugrs. Can you please go clear it out?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a sense of purpose. There's my why. I got to go down there and clear out these Draugrs so that people stop dying while they're going down in the mines. If instead Darnell walks, not even Darnell, there is no Darnell. Instead, if the game just says, go kill 50 Draugrs, that I might as well be playing Donkey Kong. There's no sense of adventure or purpose.
Right. And that's
I'm
what
just chasing
Dragon's
a
Dogma
score.
does. It does that, and there's a whole story going on that you kind of lose sight of because you get so overcrowded. It's like driving down a highway where there's all this beautiful scenery, but it's all being hidden by billboards, ad billboards. Like you can't see the beautifulness of the scenery on the other side of the billboards. So that's what this game is. Like this game has this story, which might be a great story, but I think Capcom or whoever, they get so lost in trying to make it grandiose that they forget how to make it grandiose. There's just not a lot of direction either in this game with a lot of the quests. Like some of the side story that is in this game, like there's a whole cult that you're supposed to stop because they want the dragon to succeed, but when you get to the dragon, you don't have the option. I don't know. It's another one of those games where, and I don't think I've ever found a game out there yet where your decisions actually affect the game. I mean, can you think of a game where have they made anything where, like, if I say yes,
just on the main storyline, like you choose the Stormcloaks or the Imperials in Skyrim, but that's basically just one choice. Which side of the war are you going to be on?
But does that affect the game at the end of it?
Does, because you either it impacts like which one of the towns you end up becoming Jarl of or something like that.
Oh, I don't know. But this game does that where you have to make just random decisions, and it's a confusing side story or three that are going on.
Is the idea behind it that is the idea behind it that if you make different decisions, different time, you can have a different experience each time you play through it, kind of thing?
Well, you either kill the guy or you don't kill the guy, and the only thing it really does is affect the relationship system that's hidden in this game. So I got to the point where I went into the crypts, I guess because they were doing something down there, and I caught one of the cultists, and this other guy shows up and it says I should kill him. So now I have the choice to either kill him or not kill him, and my pawns are either for killing him or not for killing him. I don't know. But I ended up killing him. So then the guy that wanted me to kill him, that's an NPC, liked that. So because he liked it, we're now in a relationship. So he's going into Grand Soren and telling everyone that we're boyfriend and boyfriend.
Now wait a
so
second.
by the
Second.
the end of the game comes, the dragon shows up. It's not the jester that's my boyfriend. So the jester gets jealous of the mason.
So hang on a second. This doesn't sound like a relationship because there's no choice that's made by your character. It sounds like you make certain decisions throughout the game,
right,
and that dictates which person's going to choose you. Well, where's your ability to choose? That's not a relationship if you didn't have a choice. There's no consent there. I'm not hearing any consent. This feels like a prison relationship more than anything else. So you don't get to follow your heart in this game because you no longer have a heart. The dragon takes your heart, so now you can no longer follow your heart.
Well, the dragon does have your heart, so he does know best. So this is a game where we run into a problem where there's so much expectation, I feel like, out there from people that like this game. They're going to see that we did Dragon's Dogma. They're going to listen to this podcast, and they're going to be like, you missed probably 90% of the stuff that we would
Well,
bring up.
I think we've been very forthright throughout the duration of this podcast, and we'll continue to do so going forward because we believe in full transparency, that we're kind of wrong a lot. We're wrong a lot, and a lot of these bigger games, we're going to take a very narrow slice of the game because there's only so much time in the day to dig into these. And so part of the point sometimes is missing the point entirely. And that's why we have our presence on social media, because we are inviting folks to reach out and tell us we missed the point entirely. Tell us what your theories are behind these games. Tell us what we should have focused on and didn't do. And I can promise you, if we get enough pushback from our listeners on a certain game, we'll consider going back and taking a second look.
Right.
We're not opposed to the idea of doing a Dragon's Dogma Part 2
Dark
at
Arisen.
some point in the future, if there's enough evidence out there from our listeners that we just completely drop the ball. If we're not hearing anything from you, we have to assume you're continuing to listen. You agree with us hook, line, and sinker. So up until this point right now, based on the feedback we've gotten, we're nailing it. We've gotten a few comments here and there. They're like, you missed the point here on this or that. But if we completely missed the point of this game, let us know and we'll take another crack at it.
It's just harder for these longer games.
It is. There's so much substance.
There's a lot of stuff. Like even in my notes, I'm looking at my notes. We could probably talk for a half hour about just the pawns themselves. The crafting system is as cumbersome as the travel in this game. You just basically, you're not really crafting anything. You're just sort of combining it. And that's the other thing that Dodongo dislikes, this whole idea of crafting and item upgrading.
If you're going to become a master crafter, you got to make 60,000 iron daggers.
Yeah.
To get there.
Well, you don't. But that's this game. You have someone else do it. It's not you that's doing it. You're combining stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like I don't want to pick everything up. Like, don't have me pick everything up. I don't need a rock. Why am I collecting 100,000 flaming arrows if I'm not an archer and my pawns don't use them?
So forget fast travel for a second. How quickly could you get through this world if you had a horse?
You can't ride a horse.
Where are the damn horses? Because they don't want to show you how small the game is.
Right. You can't. There's no horses. You can't even. There's not even a cart. I don't want to ride a cart.
Yeah.
Anyway. Let me ask you something. Did you enjoy playing the game?
No.
So, of all the games that we've done up till now, probably Genesis games, Sonic, probably terrible. Echo the Dolphin, probably terrible. You would probably rank this one, and you're like, I'm just not having fun. Was it a difficulty thing for you?
No, it wasn't a difficulty thing. It was, I think, in fairness to Dragon's Dogma, it's a comparison thing. The problem, in my opinion, the biggest problem that Dragon's Dogma has is that Skyrim came out 6 months before it. Playing this game, it's amazing to me that this game came out 6 months after Skyrim and not 6 years before it. We talk about the golden standard that Skyrim set. All this game does is it makes me want to put this down and pick up and play through Skyrim again.
Yeah.
You
know? I don't know that if we maybe overstretched our reach on going this far, or if that makes any, because we talked about the retro line, and we're not a retro gaming podcast, then maybe we didn't overstretch our reach.
I don't think we bit off more than we could chew here. I think there's just going to be certain games, whether it's one of us or both of us, that it's a big game, and we just don't enjoy playing it, and so we don't get deep enough into it to really dissect it from top to bottom. But that doesn't mean we don't have things to talk about. Are we going to miss stuff? Sure. But does it mean that it was a waste of time to look into it? No, I don't think so. Whether a game has 120 hours of average gameplay or 2 hours of gameplay, there's going to be stuff that we miss. I was really excited when you picked up a copy of this game and you're like, here, you're going to play this. I sat down, loading it up. I just got hit with a wave of euphoria. It was a Friday night. I was just so excited. I was like, clear my schedule. I'm playing this game all night long. I'm playing all night long, and I'll probably play all day tomorrow. Like, I'm going to immerse myself in this game, and I was so excited to do it. And it just failed the launch. I mean, I was in the right frame of mind. I wanted to love playing this game, and it just never sucked me in.
It's not an easy, I mean, we talked about this while you were playing it. Like, it's not an easy game. Like, it's, until you understand, like, for me to pick it up now, it's easy. But until you understand the systems and how the game works and the mechanics, it's not easy. I was getting my ass kicked when I first started.
It's hard.
Like, I'm getting my ass
from a
kicked
gameplay standpoint. It is difficult. And it's hard to get going. There's certain games that are really good about holding. Now, some modern games will hold your hand the whole way through, and I hate that. Yeah. But there's certain games that are really good about holding your hand for a while and then kicking your ass off a cliff. Like the Spider-Man games for PS4, PS5. Those hold your hand to begin with, and then they kick your ass off a cliff. To the point where if you come back after a month of being away from the game and try and pick it up where you left off, you're just going to have to start over. Because you're just going to get destroyed. But when you do start over, it won't be like Dragon's Dogma where you're getting your ass kicked just from the beginning. It'll be easy, it'll ramp you up, and then you'll master the controls, and you'll be off to the races. And then you're doing these amazing battle sequences that have just... somebody watching you play is like, this is... How are you doing this? It's incredible. It's because you slowly ramped your way up. Dragon's Dogma is different in that you just kind of getting your ass kicked from the onset, and then it's a grind to just... Why do I use that word? I need to take that out of my vernacular stash. I hate when I say grind. I don't use the word right. It's tedious from a gameplay standpoint, and it's just not super fun. And the culmination of those two things just kind of made me realize I got shit to do. I don't have time for this.
I got other stuff to do. Let's wrap this up because I don't want to be editing all day tomorrow. Let's go to bombs. I'm interested to see or hear what you gave this for your bombs.
Yep. So we're going to do a little math with Birdman like we have been lately.
Birdman math.
I originally gave 2 bombs, and then because we pride ourselves on pettiness, in the pettiest fashion possible, I took half a bomb away when I discovered that they nerfed the opening and changed the hard rock music opening over to the Final Fantasy mushy, they took away that hard rock opening, which I thought was kind of badass, and so I had to take a half a bomb away. So I'm giving it an aggregate 1.5 bombs.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. I did have that. I had that written down. The Dogma just likes the fact that they changed that music, and I think they did that whenever The Dark Arisen came out. But that guitar riff, like I would sit on that opening screen, just
that started up. And that's when my hair started to stand on end. I was like, this is gonna be awesome.
Yeah. And they changed it to some like Charlie Brown theme.
At least the Charlie Brown theme. It was more honest. This is what you're gonna get.
Yeah. You're gonna have pawns picking up rocks. For me, I'm just gonna give it 3 bombs. It was an exciting game. I like the idea of the pawn system's pretty cool. And I think that's what this game is supposed to be more about than anything. So if you were playing, like if I was playing it on Xbox and you were online, I could have taken your pawn, and I just don't think that the pawn system worked as good as they wanted it to, and they hopefully fixed a lot of that in Dragon's Dogma 2. The pawns are supposed to learn, so my pawn would go with you, and you might be in a different area of the game. So the way that I'm supposed to discover some of this stuff is from my pawn learning it from you finding it, but it didn't really translate very well in Dragon's Dogma. So
Dragon's Dogma is the same as your central character. It had no heart.
Yeah, you're right. I really think ultimately that
Dodongo dislikes Dragon's Dogma.
That's the like. We're gonna be all over the place in this podcast just because on this episode because this is fun.